So going back before the American Revolution, the British actually made a boundary line right along the Appalachian Mountains, basically banning colonial settlement in the Ohio River Valley here. This was initially British. The Ohio River runs from here up through New York, through Pennsylvania, along the northern border of what is Kentucky, and along the states of Ohio, Indiana, Illinois. Right down here before it flows into the Mississippi River, right here in what is now southern Missouri, and then flows out through Louisiana, down here by New Orleans. Now this serves as a key strategic trade hub, and after the Revolutionary War, all of this land here, west of the Appalachian Mountains, is surrendered to the new United States from the British. Now, the United States faces a massive problem in that all of this land is populated by Native Americans who do not want to give up their land. So they try to make a stand, right? Here in the Northwest Territories. This is not settled hardly at all by the Americans because it has been illegal to do it under law of the king. But now it is their territory. They are now allowed to settle it. So this imaginary line here, which was drawn by the king, now is being crossed by American settlers. The natives that are here obviously do not want American settlers in their land. So it starts to create a conflict. The natives that are here will form what becomes known as the Northwestern Confederacy. It'll be made up by an alliance of tribes, mainly in Ohio, Indiana, and Illinois. That will include the Shawnee, Miami, Delaware, Wyandot, Ottawa, and several other smaller tribes. And their main goal is to resist American expansionism. They do not want the Americans pushing north of the Ohio River. So in order to break this confederation, this resistance, and try to pacify the tribes so the Americans can settle this brand new Northwest Territories, Washington places General Josiah Harmar in charge of the region. He's based here out of Fort Washington, and he is given the orders and the objective to march north and burn the Miami village of Kikiyonga. But it'll prove to be a completely and utterly disastrous endeavor, as right here near Kikiyonga, Harmar will be decisively defeated by the natives. Harmar will suffer roughly 262 killed and 106 wounded, while the natives will suffer around 150 killed or wounded. So it is a decisive defeat for Harmar. It'll basically result in Harmar getting basically sacked, and instead will place General Arthur St. Clair in charge of pacifying the Northwest Territories, since Harmar did not do a good job. With them being emboldened by their victory near Kikiyonga over Harmar, they will begin raiding and attacking white settlers even more frequently along the frontier here. So in 1791, Arthur St. Clair will leave from Fort Washington, and he will again march north and attempt to burn Kikiyonga. But like the previous year, the natives will ambush him and effectively decisively defeat him again. It will be an even worse loss than Harmar's defeat, with the Americans losing roughly 656 killed or captured, with 279 wounded, while the natives, on the other hand, will lose about 21 men killed and about 40 wounded. So the United States force, which is initially only about 1,000 men, they will lose effectively over half by far. Basically, they will lose the majority of their force. It'll be a horrendous defeat for the Americans, one of the worst ones they have had up to this point. Now, for Washington, this is horrible. For the United States as a whole, this is horrible. For Washington as well as president, there's been 2 expeditions, and they both ended absolutely disastrously for the United States. So Washington, in an attempt to rectify the situation, he'll change up what he is doing. He will begin training one of the United States' first professional armies, and will place General Anthony Wayne in control of the region, authorizing him to train the United States' first disciplined standing army, in hopes that it will be capable of actually defeating the Northwestern Confederacy, the natives. Wayne will construct 3 forts for supply. He will construct Fort Recovery, Fort Defiance, and Fort Greenville in an attempt to form a better supply hub. Because initially, instead of just having to march north all the way, he now essentially creates a supply network where you can have bases along the way where you can be defended and protected. Now, with his army containing 3,000 trained regulars, he will march north. So Wayne will march north along his supply network that he set up. He'll march along this and will fight the natives here, where will become the Battle of Fallen Timbers. The British still held Fort Miami, even though technically it was an American territory, but this is still British. So they will fight. It's really, really close to Fort Miami where it is, right along the Maumee River. And for the United States, they will win a victory finally. Outnumbering the natives roughly 3-1, they will inflict roughly even casualties and force the natives into surrender. Following the battle, the natives will sign the Treaty of Greenville, ceding most of what is modern-day Ohio here. They'll cede most of what is modern-day Ohio here to the United States. Here you can see they will sign the Treaty of Greenville, ceding most of what is Ohio. Ohio runs from about here all the way up to the Maumee River and over. Here's where Fallen Timbers happened, right along the Maumee. This will be ceded in the Treaty of Greenville, basically giving the United States access to most of what is modern-day Ohio. That'll basically make up the Northwest Indian War. Now, there's a second technically called the Northwest Indian War, sometimes called Tecumseh's War, which happens after this, and is closely tied to the War of 1812, gets entangled with the War of 1812, where you have, it can be kind of called a Northwest Indian War, even though it technically really wasn't. It should be called Tecumseh's War, in my opinion, which basically involves Tecumseh fighting, but generally it is not grouped with the Northwest Indian War, which took place from 1790 to 1795. Basically had 3 phases. You had Harmar marching north and ending up in Harmar's defeat. Then you have St. Clair following the exact same path and ending up in a even more disastrous defeat. And then you end up with the final stage with the Battle of Fallen Timbers, where you have General Anthony Wayne marching north and winning a victory at the Battle of Fallen Timbers on the Maumee River, which is followed by the Treaty of Greenville, which cedes the majority of Ohio to the United States.